Sadhu sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Katannuko bhante janato katam passato. Imasmincha saviññānake kāye bahiddhāca sabba nimittesu ahinkāra maminkāra mānānusaya na honti iti. Dear venerable brothers and my friends, yesterday actually we stopped our discussion from the Upaya Sutta, which is talking about the consciousness aggregate, how it is dealing with the form aggregate, perceptions aggregate, feeling aggregate, and the formations aggregate. So the discussion is where there is a kind of an interaction, a kind of a dependency of the consciousness aggregate based upon the form aggregate. Similarly, consciousness aggregate based upon the feeling aggregate, consciousness aggregate based upon the perceptions aggregate, and consciousness aggregate based on the formations aggregate. A kind of an interaction. So the other four are very much like the footing, providing a kind of a footing, a home for continuity of the consciousness aggregate. So that is where it is finding a footing, a place, a home, a kind of a station for it to develop. So that's the essence where we can consider what we call as the Upaya Sutta, where Buddha mentioned Rupa upayangva bhikkhave viññānaṁ tiṭṭhamaṇaṁ tiṭṭeya. So the Rupa, the form aggregate, becomes kind of an engagement. It provides an engagement. And tiṭṭhamaṇaṁ tiṭṭeya, Rupa rammanam. So the Rupa, the form, becomes the object. Rupa patiṭṭhaṁ, it becomes the base on which it is stand upon. Nandupa sechanam. While during this process there is a certain amount of delight experienced by the this consciousness, we would say. And then buddhiṃ virulhiṃ vepullaṃ āpajjaya. And as a result of this process, consciousness further and further growing there, establishing there very well, stabilizing there, firmly established there. Now it is fully there. It has become that, very much like that. Same applied for the feelings, same applied for the perception, same applied for the formations. Now during the Vipassana process, therefore we need to understand we are reversing that process. So our mind may again and again find a footing in the form aggregate, perception, feeling, etc. Now we have to come up with a mechanism to improve, to avoid that, to abandon that, to stop that. So during Kayanupassana, so the process has to minimize that establishment. But it is not a mere forceful avoidance, rather Buddha give a kind of a introduce the wisdom. So what's the purpose of attaching? What's the purpose of engaging? Because the form aggregate is empty. Form aggregate doesn't have any essence. It is not a man, woman, this or that, but it's a kind of an empty form. F-O-A-M. Empty form. Not a real substantial entity, but it's kind of an empty, useless in a way. So when such understanding is there, so the mind naturally starts having a kind of a dispassion, disenchantment, ultimately give it up. Now the linkage between the form aggregate and the consciousness is broken, it becomes unestablished. Now as we discussed yesterday, even though it is unestablished in the form aggregate, it still has the possibility of establishing in the feeling aggregate, perceptions aggregate, and the formations aggregate. So we have to further work in this scenario to avoid even that, to avoid any establishment in the feeling aggregate, to avoid any establishment in the perceptions aggregate, and to avoid any establishment in the formations aggregate. So in a way, so what would be the kind of final outcome? A kind of an independent mind. So as Buddha again and again encourage, anissita means there is no any reference, there is no any kind of a association, there is no any kind of a dependency, so that the consciousness become utterly independent, free, not grasping anything in the world. So this kind of outcome is something that the whole practice is leading towards. So that is also explained in this Upaya Sutta. Rupa dhatuya che bhikkhave rago pahino hoti ragassa pahana vachidita rammanam patittha viññānassa no hoti. So the established consciousness would not be there then. There won't be any establishment to the consciousness. It's become unestablished. Tang appatittitang viññānam. Now when it becomes unestablished, avirulhang anabhisankacca vimuttam. And since it is not having any footing and having home, any fertilizer for it to grow as before, now it is liberated. Now it becomes freed. Anabhisankacca vimuttam. Vimuttatta titang. That's another interesting area. Vimuttatta titang. So this freed or liberated or relieved mind or consciousness stays still. So rather than wandering, rather than jumping from this to that, so it remains as a kind of a still mind. The restlessness is no more. So the restlessness has to, theoretically, restlessness has to disappear. Why, when the mind is restless, there is some kind of a desire maybe involved in that restless behavior. Either it has attached towards a sound, attached towards an image, attached towards a smell, taste, touch, a thought. So these different attractions are there, and so that mind keep on being attracted towards these different objects. So it can't remain quiet, it can't remain still. But here, when all those bondages, all those linkages are all cut off, broken, ultimately the mind has to naturally settle, isn't it? Say, if we are not influencing the mind from a form, feeling, perceptions or formations, or on the other hand from a sight, a sound, smell, taste, touch or thought, there is nothing for it to pay attention, so ultimately the consciousness has to settle in a way. Vimuttatta titang. And titatta santusitam. So this stilled mind is not an agitated mind, and again it is a contented mind. Titatta santusitam. So why we don't have contentment? Because there's an influence in the craving. So there is an inherent craving operating always in the mind. So it's always asking something. I need this, I need that, I like this, I like that. So there is something lacking. So every time there's something lacking, so we are asking for this and that. But when craving is cut off, so that asking, that need is also not there. And so it is contented. Like everything is available like. So it becomes fully contented. Vimuttatta titan titatta santusitam santusitatta na paritassati. So when it is contented, there is no any agitation either. So very much like a parallel aspects Buddha explains here. One thing is that how a freed mind, a liberated mind, unattached mind, unestablished consciousness is completely still. It has no agitation. There is no restlessness. And again it is contented and happy. So you can see many different facets Buddha is talking about this. We can say it is the Arahant's mind, or we can say it's the liberated mind. But we probably, maybe a yogi, time to time can experience it. It is not that one may continue to have a completely agitated, completely craved type of a mind continuously, and all of a sudden it become liberated or completely enlightened. Rather, time to time, when certain proper conditions are there, the yogi's mind, time to time, can reach that proper balance of the faculties. When the faculties are well balanced, so he or she may experience the stillness of the mind. Without any object, without any footing, without any attachment, without any engagement. Mind is still free, Again, there is no restlessness, there is no any agitation. It doesn't ask anything. It is contented, happy. So such instances may be there during our life, during our this yogi life. So these things have to be recognized in the way, and these things have to be appreciated in a way. But if we don't know, we simply ignore it, isn't it? Because there is no person, you can't feel sense of I there, and you don't have any presence of strong ego there, so you feel like bored there while such experience is experienced. So that is another area that probably why we are skipping that, or why we are slipping that, why we can't properly dwell in that, isn't it? So it is, we simply ignore that, or we can't even notice that, we can't even appreciate that, because there is no any triggering, there is no any entertainment, there is no any huge excitement, because typically what we prefer is the excitement, and where we feel strong presence of myself. Say whenever you feel that strong presence of yourself, someone is talking about you, someone is praising you, putting you on a pedestal and venerating you, then you feel really, uplifted. But here, there is no person as such, there is no self as such, there is no sense of I, no attachment, no grasping, so there is no sense of I, no becoming. So it's a kind of a different experience here we are talking. So during the practice, whenever such kind of a very equanimous, completely a kind of a silent, still, calm, relaxed, peaceful experience is felt, we need to probably purposely arouse a certain kind of a value to it. We need to purposely add a value to it. Otherwise, we might not like that or promote that. We may ignore that. So therefore, at the beginning, it may be purposefully, we are encouraged to land upon that, dwell upon that. So there are certain such verses that Buddha has uttered. Oka anokang agam viveke yatta duramang. Oka anokang agam. So previously the mind is associating a home. Oka is a home. Now you has become anoka, homeless. Oka anokang agam viveke yatta duramang. Now the mind is experiencing some kind of a seclusion, a restful state, but it is difficult to attach it, difficult to kind of appreciate it, like it. But you need to do that. Viveke yatta durama tatrabi rating ichcheya hitva kame akinchano. So Buddha mentioned in the Parangama Sutta, tatra abhiraming ichcheya. So that state, that calm state, that peaceful state, that secluded state, again and again you have to have a certain inclination. So Buddha is giving that kind of a motivation. Okay, you be there. Don't go back to the house. Don't go back to the home. Be homeless. Always be homeless. And there is no taste there, but try to be there. Try to be there. Stay there. Land upon there, dwell there, something like that. And then, viveke yatta duramang, tatra abhirating ichcheya hitva kame akinchano. Now, the kama are always there. Different sense objects are always surrounding us, always inviting us to associate with them. Various beautiful sights are there, beautiful sounds are there, smells are there, tastes are there, touches are there. Maybe even thoughts are there. So they are always inviting us. Okay, associate me, be with me, enjoy me. But you need to abandon it, come back to the akinchana. Akinchana means nothing is there. Tatra abhirating ichcheya hitva kame akinchano. Hitva kame. So you abandon the sense desires, sense objects, and you become no one. Have nothing. In literally nothing is there now. So can you be in nothingness? Can you be in emptiness? How can one have an attachment, desire, appreciation to such emptiness? It's very difficult, isn't it? So typically our mind prefers something, it wants to associate something, engage with something, and excited with something. So that is how the mind is trained, programmed. But the opposite has to be trained right now, believing the Buddha's teaching in a way. Now slowly, if one is able to dwell in that, probably, gradually, you might start appreciating it. It's very much like what I like to give a kind of a simile. Say, you are used to a certain environment, maybe with some gross music, gross association, and all that kind of a very gross kind of a sense impingements. And more you there, more your faculties become more and more blunt, more and more gross. These subtle sensations become almost like unable to satisfy you, unable to trigger the senses, because it is used to that very very gross kind of environment. So our faculties become more and more blunt-like, gross-like, insensitive-like. For you to be happy, you need very higher doses, isn't it? But if you are withdrawn from that and taken to a somewhat calm, quiet place, you feel bored and the mind falls asleep. Natural. So that's why when people are starting their practice, when they are asked to look at their breath or rising and falling, so easily they fall asleep. Because our mind is not used to such a neutral, calm experience. What it used to is very gross experience. Excitement, love, lust, anger, all that very excited, very defiled experience is which is associating. Now when it is taken to a very soft, very gentle, very neutral kind of an experience, it appears like utterly boring, mind naturally fall asleep. But with time, more and more you associate that experience anyway. You continue to practice, continue to dwell in the anapanasati, continue to do the rising and falling. At the beginning appear like useless, utterly boring, waste of time. But slowly, as your mindfulness is improving, as your wakefulness is improving, as your sensitivity improving, slowly, even the breath brings you some happiness, isn't it? So in your practice, there may be instances, each in-breath brings you happiness, each out-breath brings you happiness. So such kind of a refinement of our faculties have happened. Similarly, so when you are step into the emptiness, it appears like an utter boring barren land, like nothing is there to enjoy. But more we dwell there, more we associate such equanimous state, slowly mind may mature there. It become more familiar to that. It start tasting that freedom rather than being with objects. So this different domain, this objectless domain, isn't it? This unassociated domain, unestablished domain, become familiar to someone. So this kind of an area that probably we can explore using certain suttas. So that's why Buddha purposely encouraged whoever the practitioners to this different realm in a way, different way of dwelling in a way. And like the suttas, like say the last sutta of Majjhima Nikaya, the Indriya Bhavana Sutta. So the whole message is that dwell in the equanimity. So while you are having healthy open eyes, you can see some beautiful sceneries and you feel happy. But the advice is not to dwell there. Return back to the equanimity, isn't it? Return back to the equanimity. Equanimity is a kind of a serene, subtle kind of an experience. Etam santang, etam panitang, yadidang upekha. It's a kind of a calm experience. It's a very peaceful experience. It's not an excited, agitated type of an experience. Rather, it's a very soft, gentle, calm, peaceful type of an experience. So Buddha encourages the yogi to revert back to that experience again and again. It's a kind of a familiarization. At the beginning it is difficult, appear like boring, difficult to keep any appreciation. Buddha encourages that, try to appreciate, try to maintain that homeless state. Don't return back to the home. And stay there more and more without in the excited level. Either in the positive excitement or the negative excitement. Don't go to those extremes, but be in the middle, be in the baseline. Appear like difficult, isn't it? Now let's go back to the Punnama Sutta. Now, so when Buddha explained all that, so the 10th question, the last question asked by this venerable is on Katannuko Bhante Janato Katam Passato Imasmincha Saviññānake Kāye Bahiddacha Sabba Nimittesu Ahinkara Maminkara Mānānusaya Nahontīti. So he is asking how one should know, how one should see, so that this body and all other external entities, that the mind does not take anything as me, myself, I am, and doesn't have any kind of conceit I am. Ahankara, mamankara, mana, anuse. Ahankara, I making is not there, mind making is not there, any kind of a comparison. Me, not me, such kind of a comparison. The conceit part is also not there. So what is the practice to employ? So this is a kind of a question that he is asking as the last thing. It's a very profound question. So the answer Buddha is giving, Yankinji bhikkhu viññānaṁ. So I am talking only about the viññāna here. Atita anāgata paccuppannaṁ ajjattaṁ vā bahiddhā vā hīnaṁ vā panītaṁ vā yandure santike vā sabbang viññānaṁ netammam nesohamasmi na meso attāti evametāṁ yatha bhūtaṁ sammapaññāya passati. Now say for example, seeing happens. That means the eye consciousness. And with respect to that, there may be corresponding mind consciousness. Recognize in part and talk in part, all that. But there may be a tendency telling you, you are the one saw it. You are the person who saw it. Others didn't see it. So such kind of an eye-making is possible with respect to that seeing activity. So don't encourage that, in a way. During the present moment, there may be a seeing happen. For this seeing activity, your mind may prefer to attribute it to a person, to yourself, telling that you are the one person, you are the most important, so special person. Others couldn't see it, you are the one who saw it. So the eye-making can happen. Now say for example, you are, say, going through a kind of a picnic, and others didn't notice a certain treasure, but you have noticed a treasure. Nowadays I heard that the court has ordered to unearth a treasure in Veyangoda area. So just now I saw that. So people are quite interested to unearth a treasure. Assume that you are the only one who knows that. Only one who noticed that. Others didn't notice that. Then you feel, oh my goodness, I am the one, I know the secret. I know where it is. I know where I have seen it. So that seeing has become very important and creates a self. Because others didn't see it. You are the only one saw it. So the seeing has a real importance in that sense. Huge value is added to that seeing. And a self is created. So likewise, whenever we see something, whenever we hear something, smell, taste, touch, and think, suppose there is a brilliant idea come to your mind. That's my idea. So we immediately possess that idea. We introduce a person to that idea, and that is my idea. I am the one who thought like that. You couldn't think like that. Even you can't think like that. So I have such a brilliant way of thinking. So probably you can add a value to that thinking. So likewise, all these different activities, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, so we can add value and personify that. We can introduce a person into the picture and make a self, make I, myself, like that. So the Buddha's advice is don't do that. Don't do that. Seeing is merely seeing, hearing is merely hearing, smelling is merely smelling, tasting is a mere tasting, touching is mere touching, thoughts are merely thoughts. So don't make a self out of any of those. And with respect to the past also same, future also same, inferior, superior, same, close, near or far, same, gross, subtle, same. Don't attribute any person into the picture. I only touch the, say, this consciousness aggregate. Same thing is there for the other aggregates. Say to your body, for example. Now, to this body, you can have a kind of a value. Say you won the beauty queen. You participated in the beauty queen contest. Many participants were there. So you made a catwalk and ultimately you won. So you are the beauty queen. So there's a huge value to your body. So everybody is coming and you are asked to stay like this. You look at this angle, that angle. You are invited to various other occasions and you are the ones cutting the ribbon, all that. So enough value is given to the body. You can easily identify the body as something very important and you are so and so. So body is one area, a person to build a self, build an ego. So maybe the past picture. Now you may be pretty old and appear like ugly. But once you refer your past image, your wedding photo or your teenage time, pretty good. So the body, the appearance of the body is another area that we can make a self. So everywhere, so the form aggregate, feeling aggregate, perceptions aggregate, thoughts, perceptions aggregate, the formations aggregate and the consciousness aggregate, none of these aggregates. So therefore, we have to be careful not to make a self, not to attribute a self. So this is a practice, by the way. It is not a kind of a theory, a formula, but whenever mind is trying to make a self, whenever we are going through any different kind of an experience, so we need to figure out, is it trying to make a self out of this experience? Say when you are going in front of the mirror, once you see your image, so is it promoting a self? Are you feeling a sense of I once you look at that image? Once you see your wedding photo, are you feeling a sense of I by looking at the wedding photo? Once you go through your past albums, are you feeling the presence of yourself, ego? You need to figure it out, isn't it? Similarly, say someone is asking your help and putting you some important level and you are the best person, please help me, you're the only person who has a clear answer, so please come and consult me, blah blah blah. So all those actually help us to make a self. Self-importance is uplifted. On those occasions, then we need to figure out, do I have a sense of I? Do I am making a self? Am I feel uplifted? Am I feeling conceited? I am walking few feet ahead. So many different ways actually we need to look at. So how we make a self. So it's a continuous experience, by the way. Continuously we need to on guard of the mind with respect to any different kind of an aggregate. Are we making a self? Now, when the whole sermon was delivered, now another interesting incident happened in the audience. Now, when this sermon was delivered, another monk, he's having a different idea now. Now, Buddha is talking about the non-self. Ultimately, that is what promoted. Everything is happening because of a non-self. Without a self, without an agent, things are happening. In the form aggregate, there is no self. Feeling aggregate, there is no self. Perceptions aggregate, there is no self. Formations aggregate, there is no self. Consciousness aggregate also, there is no self. තේනකෝ පන්න සමයේන අඤ්ඤතරස බික්කුණෝ ඒවං චේතසෝ පරිවිතක්කෝ උදපාදි. ඉතිකර නෝ රූපං අත්තනා වේදනා ඉතිකිර නෝ රූපං අනත්තා වේදනා අනත්තා සංඥා අනත්තා සංඛාරා අනත්තා විඥානං අනත්තා අනත්තකතානි කම්මානි කත මත්තානං පුසිස්සanti. So that means, so whenever an activity is done, so who is the one doing it? So whenever activity is done, so how the karma would accumulate, karma would happen if there is no self? A kind of a valid question, isn't it? So now Buddha keep on telling there is non-self. Form aggregate also empty of self. Feeling aggregate also empty of self. Perceptions aggregate also empty of self. Formations aggregate also empty of self. Consciousness aggregate also empty of self. So when the actions, various actions, maybe wholesome actions, unwholesome actions, all are done, so how the karma going to happen? Now Buddha has seen that question. So this kind of a vitakka is now going on this monk's mind. Now he is telling, now Buddha is telling, Tananko panetam bhikkhave vijjati yang ide kaccho mogapuriso. Avidva avijjagato tanhadigatena cetasa sattu sasanang atidhavitabbang manyeya. So Buddha say, so there are such, say, mogapurisa means an empty guy who is trying to kind of outstrip, so go far ahead of the Buddha's teaching. Something like that. So he is trying to object in a way the Buddha's teaching, telling, okay, you are talking about non-self, but then it is contradicting with the karma. It's kind of an objection coming towards the Buddha's teaching. He is trying to outstrip. He is trying to go far ahead of. Now, so at that moment, rather than he accusing that monk, now he is asking series of questions from the other monks. What do you think? Tankim manyata bhikkhave. Rupan niccang va aniccang vati. Monks, what do you think? Is this form aggregate permanent or impermanent? So what is your answer? Impermanent. So they will also answer, Bante, it is impermanent. Aniccam bante. Yampana aniccam dukkhang vatam sukhang vati. If it is impermanent, is it pleasurable, happy, or is it unsatisfactory? Is it suffering? If something is impermanent, if something is transient, can you have happiness from such a transient process? I mean, assume that you are expecting certain behavior on a certain state, but it is changing otherwise, always changing something to become something else. So how can you have a happiness from such a vulnerable changing process? So the answer is, we can't have such a satisfaction because things are changing. It's become otherwise. So the answer is, it's suffering. You can't, from such a changing, transient, vulnerable process, you can't have lasting happiness. Dukkham bante. Yampananichan dukkhang viparinama dhammang kallan nutan samanupassitung etam mama eso hamasmi eso me attati. So from such a transient, impermanent, unsatisfactory, vulnerable process, can you attribute a self? Can you say that is me? Can you say that is myself? Can you say it is a soul? And once that is asked, monks say, you can't say like that. Because where the self is, where the any core available, because more you analyze, more you investigate, continuously things are changing, continuously rapidly changing. You can't find an unchanging entity, unchanging soul, either in the physical level or either in the mental level. You can't find such an unchanging, eternally lasting entity. So you can't find such a self in anywhere. Either you try to explore it in the form aggregate, either you try to explore in the feeling aggregate, either you try to explore it in the perceptions aggregate. So all aggregates were taken for your experiment, investigation. Though you are trying to recognize, research on that, ultimately nothing is there. You end up with empty. Assume that you thought there was something. That's why they are excavating, thinking there is a treasure. Keep on excavating, thinking there is a really valuable treasure available. But ultimately, after they go there, if just a granite is available, so that is what they found. So far, only granite available. So we people think that there is a person, there is a really valuable something in this body. I am the body. I am so and so. I am so beautiful, so powerful, so strong. So this is the perception we have towards the body. But more you investigate, more you understand, more you develop wisdom, vipassana, ultimately nothing is there. It's empty. No essence. That's why Pena pindupamang rupang. Isn't it? Pena pindupamang rupang. So Buddha says it's like an empty form. F-O-A-M, empty form. You might have seen the empty form accumulated in the river bank, maybe. Appear like something, right? From the distant, it appear like something. Once you go closer and touch it, it starts bursting and internally nothing is there. It's merely empty form. Vedana bubbulupama. So the feelings are like simple bubbles. Water bubbles. During the rain, there are water bubbles popping up, generated. Nothing is there. Water bubbles. Come and go, bursting. Nothing is there. Vedana bubbulupama. Marichikupama sanya. Perceptions are like a mirage. There is no water. It's a mirage. It's a utter illusion. Isn't it? I mean, in our mind, different illusions are appearing. Say about your mother, about your father, about your daughter, about your president, about your minister, whoever. So different images are appearing in the mind, but we fools attribute a person to that. To the mirage we attribute water. We don't understand that. Same foolish thing we do. In the mind, different images are happening. Different drawings are being drawn. Artworks are being done. But we fools attribute a person to that. We attach a value to that. Marichikupama sanya. Sankhara kadalupama. Or the different thought formations, different intentions appear like something very solid, something very important, appear like my lust, my anger, my this thing, my that thing. But once you properly investigate, they are merely thoughts, a bunch of thoughts. So what is the essence of bunch of thoughts? Nothing is there. In the trunk of a plantain tree, banana tree, do you find a hard wood? Nothing is there. Once you peel out the whole thing, you get nothing in the banana trunk. So Buddha gave the simile of a banana trunk to the sankhara, formations. And the vijnana, the consciousness, maya upapancha vijnana. So the vijnana, it is making all these things as something very beautiful, something very valuable. That is the kind of trick of the vijnana, magic of the vijnana, magic of the consciousness. So how to understand this magic? One needs to develop wisdom. So that's the lesson that the Venerable Sariputta explained in the Mahavedalla Sutta. So you need to develop wisdom in order to comprehend the function of the consciousness. Panya bhave tabba viññānam pariññeyyam. You need to develop wisdom. Then only you can understand the function of the consciousness, the tricks of the consciousness, how it is making a self, how it is attributing a person, all that. You can understand when you have developed the wisdom. Because the ignorant mind continuously make the fabrications. Ignorant mind. Avijja pacca sankhara. Sankharas are more and more available in the mind. You attempt to think, you attempt to imagine, you attempt to proliferate, you attempt to fabricate because the mind is ignorant. Ignorance is promoting such fabrication. When the mind is further and further fabricating, now the consciousness find a footing. Name and form is well available and the name and form is appearing in the mind, and you get established, you attribute a person, a self, a name, a man, woman, son, daughter, all and that to that images. You get trapped, you get deluded. Now the typical process has the ability to continue. You get attached, you get grasped, I making is there, mind making is there, you are there, I is there. But instead of promoting such kind of an ignorant process, if you develop wisdom, then wise mind has to have less fabrications. And ultimately no fabrication, isn't it? The wise mind, the mind which is strengthened with wisdom. The avijja is abandoned. Instead the vijja is available. Vijja udapadi, aloka udapadi. So Buddha exclaimed, right? So when he become fully enlightened, so he say, aloka udapadi, vijja udapadi. So now the wisdom is arisen, the bright light is arisen. No more sankhara. So the aggregates may continue, but you are not making any fabrications, you are not making any self, you are not adding any likes and dislikes and all that, your own stuff into the picture. You step back. Ditte ditta mattang. Seeing is there, but you are not making any proliferations. Hearing is there, but you are not making any proliferations. Smelling, touching, tasting are there, you are not making any self, proliferations, any conceiving. And ideas, thoughts may come. Based on that, again you are not making any proliferations, fabrications. So without a self, the process continues, isn't it? Without a self, the process continues. So therefore, this Buddha's approach taken to this question, that what this monk is thinking, basically promotes the investigation. Now, we can't argue telling, okay, ultimately if you guys are telling form aggregate is empty of self, feeling aggregate is empty of self, perceptions aggregate is empty of self, formations aggregate is empty of self, consciousness aggregate is empty of self, then nothing to worry. I have nothing to do. There is no person here. I don't need to worry. But you guys are coming to Kalalgoda. There is no self. So such theoretical understanding is not enough. That's the problem. So that's why here Buddha simply say, avidva avijjagato tanhadigatena cetasa chattu sasanam atidahavitabbam. So even though you theoretically say like that, still the sense of I is operating in the mind. You can argue that there is no self, but you haven't realized it. You can't operate at that level, even though you theoretically understand it, isn't it? So the argument is one thing, logical reasoning is one thing, but real realization and being, dwelling in that understanding is completely different thing. So till you have such understand-based or wisdom-based, experience-based dwelling, it's merely a superficial thought, isn't it? It's merely a superficial thought. Say someone is telling, okay, I am going to India. India is like this. It has Taj Mahal, it has this, it has this, it has Maharashtra, it has, I don't know, Chennai, blah, blah, blah. So much of information it has seen through the movies or through the news. All that information he has seen. He's still talking about that very highly. But still he is in Sri Lanka. Never have been to the Dambadiva. Never have been to India. Still he is in Sri Lanka. So quite different, no? I mean, one gone there and touched that, been that, tasted that, dwell in that, experienced that for himself. And a person who being here in Sri Lanka and talking about that has a quite different experience. So that's why the experiential knowledge is very, very important. So that's why with respect to the Nibbana, the third truth, Buddha say realization. Dukkha nirodhang arya satchang satchikatabbang. So this non-self has to be experienced. It is not a dogmatic view that everything is non-self. Someone can say so. Someone can argue. Someone can logically prove that. But still it is a kind of a formula. Isn't it? It's a kind of a formula. You can argue, okay, this is also not self. This is also not self. This is also not self. Altogether also not self. It's a kind of an argument. You haven't experienced it. So the experientially you are not working based on a self, then we can say, yes, now you understood it. You have tasted it. You are dwelling in emptiness. You are dwelling in non-self. So this teaching, this truth has internalized practically, isn't it? So therefore, theoretical understanding, logical reasoning, all that and arguing is one thing. And you thoroughly investigate and properly understood it, and then you completely avoid any kind of that, the avijja pacca sankhara, sankhara pacca vijnanam, vijnana pacca nama rupam, nama rupa pacca salayatana. So all that has to be broken, stopped, invalidate, if you are properly understood that, isn't it? So if you properly, thoroughly understood the non-self teaching, that means the mind is completely enriched with wisdom. So such a wise mind can't proliferate. It can't have this vijnana nama rupa, that circulation, that whirlpool cannot operate further. So the typical ignorant, conditioned consciousness has to completely cease. So you can refer that verse in the Diganikaya Kevadda Sutta. Vijnanam anidassanam anantam sabbato pabhang is talking about that realization of the Arahant. Vijnanam anidassanam. So his consciousness is non-manifestive. That means name and form does not appear in the mind. There is no any artwork in the mind. There are no images drawn in the mind. So it is anidassana. It's kind of lucid. It's kind of transparent type of a mind. Vijnanam anidassanam anantang. And it is not a hindered, constrained, narrowed mind. Rather it is anantang. So it's spreading, isn't it? It's completely open. Anantang, sabbato pabhang. It is enriched with wisdom. So here the pabha means the luminosity. So this luminosity is coming from the wisdom. Anantang sabbato pabhang. Yatta apocha patavi tejo vayo nagadati. So any kind of a physical objects as such, what we talk, house, wife, say president, Lanka, Sri Lanka, India, bread, sugar, none of these physical things can't have a footing in the mind. Now you can see what a kind of a aim that Buddha is giving. So typically you can see whenever you are thinking of someone, so to that person related, say some sort of a figure, some sort of an image comes and occupy your mind. No? That means that object or that person has find a footing in your mind. So once we practice, we should be able to have a mind which is completely transparent. No artwork. Completely luminous, completely transparent, and no footing find in the mind. So the Patavi Apo Tejo Vayo or any physical object has no footing, has no manifestation, has no artwork, image in the mind. And then Yatta Apocha Tejo Vayo Patavi Nagadati Yatta Namancha Rupancha Asesang Uparujjati. So name and form, that artwork completely abandoned. No more. So the further confirmation that the mind is anidassana, consciousness is anidassana. Name and form no more tangled. So typically what happened, so as we simply discuss, say whenever an image appears in our mind, the moment we have an attachment to that, moment we give a value to that, we have some desire to that, we get trapped. Consciousness gets a footing. Assume that there's an image come, but you introduce quickly some wisdom. This is an image. Then it can't find a footing, it will simply slip from the mind. So we can't immediately have a completely empty, anidassana, unmanifestive, a completely pure type of consciousness immediately. What we can do is to avoid this craving part. Say, things are appearing again and again in the mind, but you are stopping the craving part. You are not holding them. People are coming, but you are not serving tea. Say, different guests are coming to your house, but you are not inviting them to stay. You are not promoting them to stay. You are not partying with them. You are not giving any refreshments, tea, and whatever the food. So since we are not giving that, you are not showing such hospitality, they will leave the house. Same thing here. So here you are not promoting any kind of a staying to those thoughts, staying to those images. Rather you simply watch them, step back. They are not you, not yourself, doesn't belong to me. So they keep slipping from the mind. Ultimately nothing is there. So just be now. So it is now empty, spacious, transparent, nothing is there. Something like that. And the last statement, that's what I want to highlight. Viññānassa nirodhena ettetang uparujjati. So the cessation of consciousness has done the whole thing. So what is this cessation of consciousness mentioned there? So previously we are talking of the anidassana viññāna, viññānang anidassanam. But now here we are talking Viññānassa nirodhena. Viññāna has ceased. So what is that? So that is the typical consciousness, the conditioned consciousness. The consciousness which has associated something, established on something, taken something as important, beautiful, valuable, myself, me, all that. So that is that conditioned consciousness. Sometimes called as abhisankata viññāna. Constructed consciousness. So that is completely abandoned now, completely ceased now. So you can see it's a very, very profound answer Buddha is giving. And maybe during your yogi life, during your practicing life, you may touch upon this state of mind time to time. Don't think that it is completely alienated state, completely far beyond me. I can never reach that. It is not the case. Rather, during your practice, time to time we may touch that. So when we touch that, probably we have to promote it. So that's why we might not get the very purest form or perfect form of that emptiness, perfect form of the anidassana viññāna. But at least some closer level we may start enjoying, we may start achieving. Say during your Kayanupassana, during your Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, Dhammanupassana. So whenever we are talking Anissitocha vihirati nachakinchi loke upadhyati, so that is the stepping into this area. So your mind become independent, now no association with the body, no association with the feelings, perceptions, etc. So likewise, So the unassociated. So the mind become more and more independent. Mind become more and more unattached. No, the mind has stopped grasping. So this is in a way, the springboard to get into that, to the higher level. So therefore, the result of the Satipatthana practice is something very, very important, something very, very appreciative. We need to keep on practicing, again land on that. Keep on use the scaffolding, build the building, be in the building. Try to be in the building, not in the scaffolding. Always try to be in the building, not in the scaffolding. In case the building collapses, again use the scaffolding, again rebuild the building, dwell in the building, not in the scaffolding. So likewise, a kind of a play, kind of a sport. So you are using the Satipatthana to take the mind to that level, unassociated, non-grasping state. Stay there, stay there, stay there. So that further and further the mind is purified, further and further it's being enriched, enriched with wisdom, and you have the wisdom to avoid any kind of personifying or objectifying things, so that things start slipping from the mind. So the emptiness become a kind of a nature to the mind, and you are able to maintain that, maybe even effortlessly. So then we are into the correct path. So with that, I like to conclude this Dhamma sermon and wind up the whole series of Dhamma sermons based upon the Punnama Sutta. Thank you very much for attentive listening. So today we have a couple of sharing of merits. Offering of merit, Dawal Dana. Dana is offered by Shirani Rajapaksha in memory of her mother, Sita Rajapaksha, who passed away 4 years ago. May the merit accrued help her realize the Dhamma soon and attain Nibbana. May the merit from this Dana also help our relatives, friends and pets who have passed away. May they realize the Dhamma and attain Nibbana soon. May the merit accrued also be shared with the Mahasangha, all meditators, their families, friends and pets, and may we all realize the Dhamma soon and attain Nibbana. Sadhu sadhu. And there's another one, Friday, lunch dana and Saturday breakfast dana offered by Nirmala Kulatunga and family, Indrani Piris and family. To pass merits on late Mrs. Soma Senanayaka and all other late relatives, late Deepthi Suryarachi, son and all the other late relatives. So these are the sharing of merits. So I invite Venerable Dhammalankara to conduct the formal sharing of merits.